Friends, today is Monday, the 5th of October, and as you can see, it's my day off, and I'm back in my room to make a few comments today about one of my favorite parables, and I'm sure it's one of your favorite parables as well, unique to the Gospel of Luke, and that is the parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Every time we read this parable, there is something new, something jumps out that maybe one didn't notice before, and that is true for me as I'm reading the parable today, has caused me to give it some more thought. It demands more thought. It's one of those parables that really would be great if we could just have a discussion, sit around, pull out this parable, and talk about it. And talk about that whole question of who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the parable briefly. It starts out typical of a parable of Jesus, and especially in Luke, with a little kind of context introduction. Jesus, once again, speaking with one of the scholars, scribes of the law. It says that a scholar of the law, probably a scribe, a scholar of the law, who stood up to test Jesus. Now, the question that he gives seems a typical question one would ask of a spiritual leader. But we have that little bit of a twist here to test. So we take it from that standpoint, this scholar testing Jesus and says, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What must I do?" And Jesus throws the question back to him. "Well, you're a scholar of the law. What does the law say?" And the man says, which we would agree with here, I think, what is written in the law, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And the man, we would have to say, answers correctly from the Old Testament, this passage, two passages from the Old Testament about love. We might have a discussion here, though, if everybody were sitting around, and we might ask about the question itself. What must I do? What must I do to inherit eternal life? Makes us think that we can kind of work our way to heaven by what we do. Now, Jesus does say in the scriptures that there are things we need to do if we are to be disciples, but keep in mind that salvation is always a gift. Now, the scholar of the law here, it's as if he feels he really needs to win this argument. And he doesn't feel that's all settled yet, so he pushes things. Pushes it and says, "Well, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor?" And that's where Jesus takes off here and tells us the story of the Good Samaritan. Most of us are familiar with that, a man of the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and that road is still there today. Jerusalem is at the height, over 3,000 feet above where this man is going, down to Jericho, which is down by the Dead Sea. So it had a lot of twists and turns, and robbers frequently were there. This man gets attacked, left for dead in the ditch. 3 people come by. Says the first is a priest, kind of looks into the ditch, runs to the other side of the street, and takes off. The second one, it says, with a Levite, and he looks into the ditch, runs to the other side of the street, and takes off. And finally it says, a Samaritan traveler came. A Samaritan. We have to remember, Jews and Samaritans are enemies. They will have nothing to do with each other. And they will not, as the scriptures might say, lift a finger to help each other. And so what happens here? The Samaritan, and this, of course, is the twist and the surprise of the gospel. One who was considered an enemy pulls the man out of the gutter and takes care of him out of the ditch, and eventually takes him to an inn, pays for his care, and so on, and leading to the final question at the end. Which of these three, Jesus says, was the neighbor? And the scholar of the law answers, interesting, he can't say the word Samaritan. He says, the one who treated him with mercy. The one who treated him with mercy is the neighbor. And that, of course, and two things then. And this was a little insight that came to me. We can see this parable from the perspective of the Samaritan, who looks into the gutter, looks down into the side of the road, and sees someone and helps him. Like Christ himself, fathers of the church would say that the Samaritan is Jesus, the Jesus who's looked after us. No matter who we are, Jesus will pull us out of the trench, out of the gutter. But we can also see it from the standpoint of the man who is in the gutter looking up at someone who is about to help him. And here you have to imagine again the enemy relationship between Samaritans and Jews. Try to imagine that the man off to the side of the road in the gutter is a Ku Klux Klan member, and he's even got his hood on, and he's there on the side of the road in the hole in the gutter, and he looks up, and of course he's very much in need, and he looks up and he sees a black person looking down at him, wondering what he will do. And that perspective is actually the one that this parable wants us to consider. That the man in the gutter, the Ku Klux Klan member, himself would see who his neighbor is. Neighbor as object, in a sense, the one who will help me, not the neighbor as subject. I got to go help that person, but rather seen from the other way. That person who's looking at me is my neighbor. And thus a kind of double conversion. Think about that. Hold that thought, and we'll see you tomorrow.